The war on the Algerian borders. From June 1956, the French began a campaign to control the western and eastern borders of Algeria. The aim of this action is to isolate FLN troops and stop foreign Berber aid from the other two countries. And why? Because the FLN had its bases and training camps in both Morocco and Tunisia. Thus the Felagers left Algeria for military training and returned with equipment to supervise and reinforce the Katibas, main unit of the Armée de Libération Nationale, composed of 100 fighters between 1957 and 1962. ALN's personnel in Tunisia increased from 2,000 to 22,000 and in Morocco from 2,000 to 10,000. At the same time, the armament used by the independentists is improving, with the introduction of high explosives and heavy weapons, such as 120 mm mortars and 122 mm howitzers, supplied by the communist countries. The response of the Gauls was total. They blocked the maritime access, with coastal patrols on the borders of the Sahara. At the ends of Algeria, camel or motorized patrols controlled these vast rays. Air and radar surveillance is carried out, with the French Air Force trying to stop the FLN's air supply. But this leads to a question: how to close the eastern border between Tunisia and Algeria and the western border between Morocco and Algeria? Drawing on a war experience from Italy prior to World War II, France erected a dam on each border, east and west, with heavy and sophisticated weapons, on the Moroccan side, between Port Said and Colombeka, with 550 kilometers on the Tunisian side, from Cape Roux to Negrin, for a total of 380 kilometers in 1956. A barbed wire line was erected between Morocco and Algeria. But after some time, Gallic military engineering electrified the fence, laid mines and installed a network of metal silos. Later, this form of fence was applied on the Tunisian border by Colonel de, former electromechanical of the Maginot Line, ordered to install on June 26, 1957, by the Gallic Defense Minister, André Maurice. This went from Bain to Tebessa, electrified and reinforced further south by stations of radar plus cannons. Due to the air surveillance perpetuated by the French Air Force during the day, the Felagers are trying to cross the night lines. How they worked: once a power cut is known, units in the area are alerted by radio. After the military electromechanics, under the protection of light armor, rushes to the site. Along with these, the armed units of the quadricular go to the place, learning that they need to fight the Felagers at the border. As a result, a plane launched flares into the air. Artillery fire between the barbed wire and the border. If an enemy group manages to get through, it triggers a system in which infiltrated groups are pursued by units from that grid, being helped by other elements of intervention that isolate the sector, if necessary. The command sends reserves for harder blows, legionary regiments or paratroopers, special groups, and helicopter detachments. As such, skirmishes begin that turn to large-scale battles. Due to the fact that the FLN was unable to carry a constant number of weapons into Algeria, the leaders of the independentists went on a constant campaign to pierce the French border dams. From the beginning of 1958 until May of that year, the border battles took place in the eastern region of Constantine, followed by heavy fighting in the area of Soukaras, El Merij and Negrim. The results: French forces eliminated 4,000 rebels, took 600 prisoners, and seized 2,350 weapons, all at the cost of 273 French dead. This caused a psychological terror in the minds of the soldiers of the FLN army. In March 1960, Boumediene, leader of the ALN, made a large-scale operation in which he hired 8,300 fighters, sending 100 of them to try to pass the dams, but it did not work. At least 40 were found dead in July. The ALN tried again, but failed, resulting in 650 dead and wounded rebel forces. 2 years later, the FLN installed howitzers and mortars at its bases in Tunisia and Morocco to bomb French grid forces at the border dams. The French chieftains are concerned that these were not meant to withstand the heavy fire load. But the protections held, and in 1962 the rebellion was defeated militarily. However, the political damage was done, as well as in public opinion. Even if the army was triumphant, Algeria would leave the sphere of Paris.